Alright guys, so today we're going to be testing out using brick acid to remove fuel tank rust. This is Puch Maxi, and that's the state of his tank. And this is brick and patio cleaner, also known as brick acid. It's strong stuff. It contains 30% hydrochloric acid, also known as muriatic acid. I'm going to be using it neat, and this can eat through concrete if you leave it long enough, so you don't want it on your skin or anything, and also the fumes are horrid. So for this experiment you will require one Jubilee clip and a screwdriver to tighten it up with. I'll tell you about this stuff in a second. We've got 10mm internal bore PVC tube to fit over the petcock threads. We've got a funnel to save your paintwork. I'm using acetone based nail polish remover to get rid of any gunk that's dried on inside the tank and expose the metal ready to be etched by the acid, which you've already seen. Now, safety precautions. These are the Dr. Nefario style gloves from Despicable Me. Here's some very trendy safety goggles, and then you need a breathing mask as well, and if like me you live in World War II, this might be what's available to you. You also need to cover up any exposed skin because it'll eat you, and be very careful with it. Use it in a well ventilated area. First thing to say is, you're not going to get a very good view, but this tank actually rattles. See if we can do it again. That's all rusty, shitty flakes inside, and they're a complete nightmare to get out, so hopefully the acid will actually burn them away. So, I've taken the petcock off, and this is the state of the petcock. So I was obviously trying to JB weld it back together at some point. There's a screw for a tap, so I'll be replacing that. And this 10mm tubing I've attached on with the Jubilee clip straight onto the threads, as tight as you can, because you don't want any of what's going in next to spill on your paint if possible. We have a funnel there, and now it's just a case of emptying this nail varnish remover in. Taking a lot of care not to spill it, like I just did. More care than that, I would say. The beauty of the hose method is that you can now use the hose to check the level to make sure you're not going to overflow it. That is all that I had, unfortunately. That's 4 bottles worth in there. So I would ideally like to fill the tank all the way up and leave it, but the worst of the gunk is going to be at the bottom anyway, so I'm just going to shake it around every so often to coat it and then let it sit in the bottom. Only need to leave it about an hour. I'll probably be leaving it for a period of days. Here's the acetone after 3 days. Note the extra flakes of rust that were freed that were presumably stuck to the inside of the tank. And here's the pipe. It's actually sort of deteriorated a little bit, so it's gone all floppy, but there's still loads stuck in there, look. Now, it's very important to flush as many of these flakes of rust out as you possibly can, either with hose water or a pressure washer. It took me about 6 or 7 goes, and I've got all of it out. I think the water's running clear when I tip it out now. I've got my safety gloves on, and I'm ready to go. Now, it's important to keep it off anything you don't want etching, like paintwork, flesh, clothes, anything like that. But if you do happen to spill any, you can neutralize it with bicarbonate of soda, also known as baking soda. Now, here's the big comparison to see how well we did. This is what it looked like before, and then I checked it again 5 minutes after I poured the solution in, and you can see it does look a bit better already. Not a great deal of improvement after half an hour. After an hour I thought it was about finished, but you can see some black chunks, especially in the left hand side now, so I filled it up again and we went 2 hours. Now, it does have a little bit of surface rust there, so I did run it through just for 5 minutes afterwards just to get rid of that. But here's me draining it out, and here's the procedure for once you've drained it out. You need to neutralize it. So first of all, make sure you don't spill any. That's the beauty of the hose method there. And then you need to neutralize any remaining acid in the tank with bicarbonate of soda, which should prevent flash rusting like you saw in the last picture there on the comparison. So here's the bicarbonate of soda. The way Moped Army, which by the way I'll put a link to their wiki on this in the description, the way they say to do it is to mix it before you pour it in. However, I just went for it, dumped some in the funnel and then kept swilling it down and kept going like that. It does block up a little bit as it all sort of enters the tank at the same time and causes a bit of a backlog, but you can poke it down with a screwdriver or something and it will all go in there and react with the acid in the same way that it reacts when you put bicarbonate of soda in vinegar to make volcanoes for a science fair at school. The optional next step, which I like to do, is mix a 50-50 mix of 2-stroke oil and methylated spirits. Swill that around the inside of the tank, drain off the excess, and then leave the tank with the stopper off in the sun so that the methylated spirits can evaporate off and leave a layer of 2-stroke oil on the inside of the tank. I like to do this if I'm going to be storing the tank for up to 3 months, because you don't want that to dry on as varnishy rust, but it should keep the tank from flash rusting even if there's a slight amount of moisture gets in. After that, you need to fill it up with 2-stroke and petrol, as you do, and then dump all of that out without using it, because it will be contaminated with any residue or water in there. Then you can put your proper stuff in and off you go. So this is the reaction occurring between the bicarb and the acid. You can see it bubbling away there. First time I did it, it was quite violent actually. It started coming out the funnel. I was worrying for my paintwork, so I spent the whole time rinsing the paintwork off until it had finished reacting so violently. And that's a very good reason to wear the goggles and other safety equipment, because you never know if it's going to react or spill out anywhere. I did end up rinsing this tank out 5 times using half a tub of bicarb each time, which is more than it says on the article on the Moped Army wiki to use, but I just wanted to be extra sure. And you've got to make sure you get it all the way up to the top of your tank as well, because you don't want any acid remaining in there and getting into your petrol and then eating away seals in your carb and stuff like that. So the next step I did after this was rinsing it out with the isopropyl 90% alcohol. And then I just put 2-stroke mix in there, so 50-to-1, the usual you'd use. And I'm going to leave that in there until the bike is built up, and I'm going to replace it and probably rinse it out with a little bit more just before I connect the carb and everything up and try and start it. So that is the plan. This is me drying the rest of the alcohol from the tank with a hairdryer, and I'll put up on the screen the costings so you can see how much this actually costs to do, but I think it was fairly economical. Thank you very much for watching, guys.